Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Alderson. I'm the Chief Executive at Construction Health and Safety New Zealand Trust. So we are the not-for-profit organisation that really all we're here to do is sort of try and prevent harm and improve health and safety in the construction industry. So look, COVID-19 is not going away. I think that's pretty obvious. There's a strong chance it will hit your site, or you'll know somebody who's been impacted by it. Maybe soon. Today we're going to hear from Link Alliance, the people working on Auckland City Rail Link. They got their first Delta case in late October, and they continue to manage the impact of COVID-19, obviously ongoing. And look, we get to share the benefits of their experiences, and they're learning from that as well. So we're very grateful for them to step forward and actually talk to us about it. We're really interested in what it felt like. How did it impact people? What their sort of initial reactions were? Perhaps what the lessons are for some of us who haven't been here yet. We've got Slade McFarlane from Mates of Construction Field Officer. Joining me from Link Alliance is Peter Pamale. He's a team leader at Aotea site, working on a station building. He can tell us about working through level 3 and his perspective of rolling out health and safety work on site. He's also a Mates connector, which is great. Oscar Reindler is a project manager. He can talk to us about the cases in his team, how he got some reassuring info about getting some of the financial things taken care of. We have Chantel Bukes as a health and safety advisor. She was right at the front line, so she was a close contact of a case. She had to isolate herself. So what was that like? Dale Burtonshaw, he leads the Link Alliance COVID-19 response team, so I guess he's in the epicentre of all this. It's going to be really great to hear from him as well. So look, right, let's get into it. First up, I'd really like to hear from Peter. Just talk to me about what happened when things first kicked off on your site around COVID-19. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, the first few weeks it was really hard to try and find the right PPE gear that we could sort of use for the types of jobs we were doing.
How did you find the heat with the glasses and the masks, Peter?
Yeah, the heat was it was terrible to be honest at first. But just like anything, the more you do it, it just tends to sort of normalise itself. You start getting quite used to it now. Like it's just normal practice now. Everybody's just got the right glasses. They know what they can wear. I wish I brought in my thing. So I know a lot of the guys. These are the masks we use. You come up with little bands that you actually stick on them. That's sort of like a headband that goes right around, elastic band, so it doesn't actually touch your ears.
I was talking to Slade, and maybe you'd come in here, Slade. We sort of noticed with the mask wearing, sort of has changed people's sort of way of communicating with each other. We don't get so many visual signals anymore, do we?
Yeah, no. One of the big things that actually came in, it's a very cultural thing too, was because they can't see each other's faces. They're not too sure whether someone's smiling at you or someone's frowning at you. But it's very culturally, because a lot of the island communities, we're finding out that being able to share food, they can't share the food with each other. And generally these Saturdays, they're all about bringing themselves together. And because of the restrictions of COVID, the Saturdays were like those little achievements of the week. That they can actually have, these meals together and actually spend a little bit of camaraderie together. And because these things are slowly being taken away from us, and because we're having to stay within the bounds of what, the COVID laws are, the guys are just feeling like it's just another Groundhog Day. It's a day in, day out, come to work, and what I've really found out is that they don't get to celebrate the achievements that they've done on site, which they're very used to, their little milestones. So these are things that we're hearing on the ground floor, just from the guys, of what that looks like, and just now the hand signals of what that's supposed to look like to try and get your work done without trying to break those small little confined spaces of that 1 meter. So it has been a challenge, listening to the guys and what that looks like.
Hey, I might switch to Chantel now. Now Chantel's a health and safety advisor for CRL. And Chantel, you were right at the front line of this. You were actually a close contact of a case and had to isolate at home. Look, thanks for being part of today. Can you just go through what happened to you and what your experience was like?
It was a bit of an emotional roller coaster for about 2 minutes, but being health and safety, we immediately needed to react. So we had to identify the close contacts, get them off-site, arrange COVID testing, inform the guys on the next steps. But yeah, so not a lot of time just for myself to soak it all up. My immediate thought was my son. Had I taken it home to him. But yeah, it was a good learning curve.
The things that you really needed to go right, or the things that were sort of real problematic in those, during isolation, what was sort of the things that you needed, or the things that you really needed support with?
Well, obviously, I'm office-based and site-based, so I can't do all my work. I can catch up with a bit of admin work, but some of the stuff like JSAs and stuff still requires interaction with other people, the engineers, the superintendent. So it was a bit tricky to get stuff like that done, but that's basically the only struggles. And then we can't be there to support the people. We only had one health and safety advisor on site to support the whole team, because myself, me and my manager were identified as close contacts, and we were only doing our job by assisting a worker that got injured.
How long were you isolating for?
A full 14 days. Me, my husband, my son, and then all the other, I think it was 18 close contacts that we had to, I had to manage them, organize COVID testing for them, update the Link Alliance on their test results. I had to take my own family for swabs I was day 1, day 5, and day 12. Luckily, all of them were negative. So I do believe that the vaccination part and the face coverings, they do their job to keep us safe.
Yeah. It must be quite tough, being at home in that sort of stressful situation, 14 days, and then you've sort of got the work-life balance thing going on in your face every day.
When you work at home, you tend to work longer, so there's no indication of leaving your computer to go home, so you just continue to work. So that's maybe a negative part of working from home.
And did you you were just paid normally through that stage, or was it sick leave, or what happened?
No, normal pay. Normal pay. Yeah.
So you were supported through this. What about sort of welfare checks and things like that? Did you get sort of checked in on by various people?
I was in constant contact with everyone every day, so I didn't believe they had to check up with me.
No. So Slade, this is something that we've talked about before. Is that nagging worry, as Chantel said, that there's people who potentially aren't in such a strong position that have to isolate, and potentially that could be quite a big risk for some people, couldn't it?
Oh, 100%. We've heard through the grapevine, if, just like what Chantel's talking about, if the information isn't being produced or given over to our clientels or our subcontractors, we have the potential of some guys actually coming back to work just through fear of losing their job, fear that, they're not going to get paid if they become positive. So, we really, really iterate that, like what CHASNZ bringing up the protocols of what they're like, we really need our industry, and we really need actually our industry to be, especially the guys in Auckland, to be industry leaders. We have to, because we've experienced it for longer than anybody else in the country. And so we really need to make sure those things are put in place, so we don't have the where some guys will actually, or workers will fall through the cracks. And we just got to make sure that that information is ready available. We know what the procedure looks like. And just like she just said, we really need to check up on our workers. So those are all our welfare checks. And we got welfare checks on our website, which you can download. But we're really saying, hey, be clear and honest and direct. Encourage your workers. Check on your workers as much as possible, but be available because they're actually asking you. And that trust is right there. And if they're asking you for that information, you can't give it, then they're going to find out, well, I'm not too sure how to do this properly. So they really are going to be asking a lot of us, especially in the HSOs, because they're entrusting you to make sure that they've got the right information so they know what to do. So, but as like you say, self-care is one of the most important things. I mean, I've faced it myself. It's very hard because the Ministry of Health, they call 3 days after the fact or possibly even longer, depending. So it's really up to us as an industry to really try and drive that so that, 3 days later, if you get a phone call, which I did, and it's not easy to take on board because, once again, like Chantel, I was thinking of my wife and I was thinking of my kids. And it was frustrating because, to get told that I'm a casual contact plus, what does that even look like? What is it, you're supposed to be isolated for 5 days. And I said, this is Saturday. That happened on Tuesday. How does that work? So these are the things that, I've experienced firsthand, and it can be very stressful because you're just trying to navigate the best way possible with very little information at the time. But as I know that you, Chris, and your team have done some great work, and we need those charts so that we can actually give that to our workers and understand, hey, this is the process.
Yeah, thanks. So look, I might just turn to Oscar now. So Oscar's a project manager for Link Alliance. We're really sort of maybe a couple of things you might want to cover for us, Oscar, just around some of the entitlements, whether you are entitled to be paid if you're sick with COVID. What do you do if you aren't paid? What if you're self-employed? Have you got any sort of insights on that, Oscar? Then maybe have a chat about your own situation as well and how you've found this.
Yeah, I do. So I'll start with, I think we've definitely had the lion's share of COVID cases and casual contacts, casual plus, close contacts, you name it. So we've had 7 of our teams stood down since we've been working back under level 3. And for us, we're a team of 110 roughly, so between site and office. And with those 7 teams, we've had collectively 110 people stood down. So pretty big impact for us. I guess with regard to the pay, all of those guys, while they're stood down, staying with full pay. So we're looking after the team. We want them to be, like I say, looked after and then ready to come back when they're given the all clear. And hit the ground running. The big things that we've taken away from this and our lessons learned have been backup crews. So we were pretty fortunate because we were trying to accelerate our works to make up for the level 4 lockdown when we had our first cases kick off. So we were able to replace that team with our back shift crew and keep things moving. That back shift is drawing to a close, and we've just had our 7th team stood down as of yesterday, I think it was. And so now we're running into issues with keeping the boat moving forward without the team to do the work. So for the other construction managers, project managers, team leaders out there, that's something to be thinking about. How do you set up and maintain a cover crew, basically? Because I think the other big one, which is good lessons learned for us, has been when we set up our bubbles, we need to do a really good job of that. So we've got, I think it's 12 or 13 site bubbles for our works. Our bubbles are working really, really well. So we've got a lot of sites which are working relatively close to each other, but they maintain that separation. And with that, we're able to keep the rest of the work, so adjacent works, happening.
So is it a little bit like, your bubbles are an insurance policy in a way, that if something does come in, you've got, even though it's a hassle to have bubbles, obviously, it sort of pays itself back in the meantime, because when you do get COVID, it's much easier to isolate.
Yep, definitely. So we're really quickly able to, the crews are already isolated. So like I say, we've got that good separation between the teams. They've all got, each work bubble has got its own individual facilities, so smoko rooms, toilet blocks, etc. And like you say, when the news does come through, we know what the drill is, and like I say, one crew will be stood down, but all the other adjacent works can box on.
I guess the other benefit of your approach there, Oscar, is we were worried about the fact that some people might hide the fact that they're COVID positive and still come to work, and whatever their motivation might be, it might be financial, for example. They can't afford not to be at work. Was that in your thinking in terms of the strategy that you've taken?
The team that we've got a really good culture with regard to that, and then that's. So I don't think the team would be doing that anyway, but yeah, no issues there.
So in some ways, you probably avoid any sort of stigma associated with someone being COVID positive on site.
Definitely, and I think when the first one happened, we always knew it was coming, so there was no stigma associated with it at all. We've got all these great plans and systems and everything, but like I say, we knew it would happen at some point. It was inevitable, and the plan so far has worked really well.
Have you seen much of that stigma in other sites, Slade, or is there any sort of fear or any issue with people sort of coming forward with COVID? Do you think there's any barriers to that?
At the moment, it's been pretty clear cut. I mean, obviously, with the way things are moving forward, depending on what kind of construction companies are either mandating what they're supposed to look like. But we do see on occasions where they have good processes, just like what Oscar's doing right now, just to try and mitigate the best way possible because of their turnover, just to try and keep the engine moving.
Okay, let's talk to Dale now.
So currently we've got about 900 people working out on site, and that's not just our own, that's subcontractors, suppliers, people providers. One of the biggest concerns that anyone has with this is obviously payment and security of life. So you talked before about how do you get rid of the stigma. So all through this whole crisis, I guess our philosophy has been getting everyone to follow the basics. If you're not well, don't come to work. Don't come to work, but don't be penalised. So great deal of planning. When we went back into level 3, and similarly now in red, we're still maintaining those bubbles. Having positive cases is a real concern, as Chantal has already said. And the first ones that we had, I guess, there was a fair bit of panic, a little bit about it. What do we do? The very first few cases of a lot of hesitancy and concern. And obviously getting contact tracing and identifying close contacts, and that has been a real focus for the team. So we've been very lucky. As a philosophy, and I guess for other businesses and other construction companies, it's not so easy if you're very small. But I think encouraging people and even paying for them to be away from work if they're not sick, there has to be a level of trust built up. In terms of COVID cases and communication, the very first thing it's all about is the individuals and the people and the crew that are involved. So getting around and supporting them. Again, we're very fortunate. We've got a great team of administrators, safety, and HR people. So as Chantal has done for her team, monitoring, checking, because I guess as a government with so many 100 cases, it's very difficult to manage that. So that personal support is really important. We meet as a response team to talk about the issues. We're continually learning lessons for each of the cases, and we're getting better at ring fencing it. And we're at a state now where, if there is a positive case, if you haven't been talked to, then you're okay. So just carry on as normal. And it's a little bit about getting life as normal as possible. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, sharing of information, forums like this, Mates in Construction.
Have you explored any other types of testing or surveillance, or what's your sort of overall strategy around testing?
Yeah, look, with rapid antigen testing, it's a little bit like when you have a drug and alcohol test. You go into a van, do a little bit of it, and then within 15, 20 minutes, you get a test result. If it is positive, you then have to go and get a nasal test. The success of using rapid antigen testing gives you an immediate result, and then you can basically ring fence people, and you can actually automatically test people very quickly as well.
What we'll do now is just sort of open questions to the panel. Just more the general advice.
Doesn't really matter how big you are. Firstly, we look after our people, and it doesn't matter whether you're 1, 2, or 5 man or person man. You want to look after them. So obviously, people being away from work is a cost. But you've got to look at the options and go, hey, listen, if someone in my team turns positive and we all go home for 14 days, what's that going to cost, So encouraging people to stay away from work when they're not well,
Just a question, I guess, in terms of any particular sort of life hacks or shortcuts that, you wish that you'd known, 3 or 6 months ago that you've sort of learned now. Maybe start with you, Oscar. Is there anything that sort of comes to mind that, has been a real advancement in your learning around dealing with this?
I think it would be going back to the comments before about having, if you need 20 people to do a job, we'll factor in having another 5 or 6 on hand, be it a back shift or however you want to do it, so that when crews are stood down, because it's going to happen and it's going to continue to happen, the boat doesn't stop moving. You've got enough people there to keep things going.
And if you're a smaller organisation or a smaller site, any sort of tips from their perspective on that? How are they going to manage through this?
I think then it would be going into how you work as a work bubble, and being really vigilant with that, and ensuring that everyone's got that understanding of the importance of sticking to the bubble. And I suppose when it goes wrong, it can go thermonuclear, especially for a smaller company with a smaller bubble size, and it's maintaining the bubble and looking after it and just reinforcing it all the time, the importance of it.
And Slade, sort of any sort of general sort of things that you're seeing, or messages or advice for smaller businesses in particular?
Usually with our smaller businesses, they actually reduce the actual amount of travelling in and out because of just the mere fact that, going down the road and getting a lunch is a big no-no, because the mere fact is that, you could go to have lunch outside of that little bubble, come back in, then all of a sudden, you got a whole lot to pay for in regards to what that looks like if you come back positive. So we're seeing with the smaller sites that they actually control in and out. Once you come in, they're advising, please make sure you bring your own lunch, what that all looks like, so we can stay on site and then you can have your full day there. And it's just trying to mitigate the best way possible. But we're just seeing that a lot of the smaller sites are just really vigilant, just to try and, keep that open and direct, honestly, just being as transparent as possible, because, at the end of the day, you affect everybody on that site, and that possibly puts a lot of financial pressure once again. So I agree with Oscar, but little small sites just putting a little bit more in regards to contingency plan and how to mitigate it and keep that bubble together.
Thank you. And Chantal, just a question for yourself. If you haven't got someone like yourself working there, a health and safety professional, where do you sort of think people's best source of information should be in terms of knowing what to do, how to react, what the best next step is? What's your sort of advice there?
Have a COVID procedure, understand your COVID procedure, so that if someone comes to you and have a question regarding it, you can immediately explain to them and make them feel comfortable. with this whole experience, the moment people hear about a positive case, whether it's on another side or wherever, they do tend to freak out a little bit. And then you just need to calm them and reassure them that it's okay, it's been sorted. I think, yeah, basically just everyone should know their COVID procedure, so that you know how to respond. Perhaps a supervisor. I believe smaller companies would have a supervisor.
And so that whole process of being able to act quickly, knowing who the people were who were potentially a close or a casual contact, was really important. So that relies on your sign in and your sign out, those simple procedures that construction companies have been quite good at.
Yes, and bubbles, keeping the people in their separate bubbles so that you know exactly who the positive case has dealt with. You can just remove that team from site and you're good to go. And then you just need to do a little bit more assessing to make sure that you've got everyone off site, and then you just tell them what's their next steps and send them home and reassure them that they'll be fine.
Yes, just a couple of closeout points and lessons learned. And one is just considering your environment. You know, we talked about different size of construction sites. If you're working inside in an enclosed space, obviously the risk of transmission is higher. If you're working outside, it's a lot easier. Look, Slade raised a great point about not going down and having a lunch, you know, outside and all of those sorts of things. So a lot of common sense around that is probably one of the best ways of doing that. And then just lastly, you know, like we do emergency evacuation trials or tests, you know, everyone should pretend and do a bit of a trial positive case. So, you know, what do you actually do? And even if you don't have a COVID procedure in place like we do, doing a bit of a test run will certainly help the fact and the occasion when it does. So that would be a great way of getting prepared for it.
Great systems, Microsoft Teams and Zoom that we're using at the moment. Use that to reach out to your subs and suppliers. That was invaluable for us. Yeah, use this great technology we've got.
Yeah, I was just thinking, for both big and small organisations, I guess having teams that are multitask, are really good at doing different things as a bonus for helping out. You know, when people are away, they're able to do a number of things rather than just the one.
It's a good learning opportunity.
Totally, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what that is just investing in your team, you know. And what that does is it builds their self-esteem, which is what it's all about.
So I'd just like to finish up by thanking all our panellists today, and go well and go healthy, guys, and continue on.